How to delegate more effectively in your business. Time is a limited resource for all of us. We each have 24 hours in a day, and when you have something big you want to accomplish in your business, chances are good you're going to need to involve other people to get it done. So let's dive into how to delegate more effectively in your business. Hi, my name is Rachel Steininger, and as we discuss today how to delegate more effectively in your business, we're going to dive into a couple key topics. I'm going to share with you my top tips for making sure that when you delegate off to your team, you're really getting the results that you're looking for. 3 things that you can do right away to get better results with your delegation. The next thing we're going to talk about is the common trap that I see so many managers falling into that you can so easily avoid and will get you, again, better results, more effective delegation. And then finally, what we're going to cover is we're going to put to rest some of this common advice that the reason you delegate is to get low value tasks off your plate. Sure, you can do that, but there is something else much, much greater that's going to be far more effective for your business. Here are my top 3 tips for making sure that you're delegating effectively in your business. Number 1, we start with the responsibility that you retain when you delegate. Of the top 3 tips, the first 2 go hand in hand, and those are that we need to provide context for the things that we're delegating off, but we also retain a certain level of responsibility. The more context that you can give, the more responsibility that you can hand off, because you're going to have the assurance that they know exactly what to do. It's not so much even trusting in the people that you're delegating to, but trusting that the context has been given. Now, you may have heard the parable of 3 blindfolded men going up and touching different parts of an elephant. One is touching the tail of the elephant and thinks that what they're holding onto is a rope, a very strong rope. Another one goes up to the leg, feels it, and thinks that they're embracing a tree trunk. And then the third is touching the trunk of the elephant, but thinks that they're dealing with a fire hose or something totally different. They don't have the context to understand that each of them is working on different parts of the overall elephant. And so the responsibility that you retain as a leader, delegating off to your employees, your team members, is the responsibility of providing that context, for helping them understand that they're not just working on the tail or on the leg or on the trunk of the elephant, they're working on the elephant as a whole. And the more that you can accept that you still retain responsibility for the outcome, that it's not handing things off into a blind hole, the more smoothly your delegation process is going to go. So you retain that focus on the outcome, but the more you can provide context to the people on your team, the better off they're going to be in terms of being able to fulfill the overall directive, being able to work together to say, hey, I'm not working on a rope or a tree trunk or a fire hose, I'm working on the elephant and we're all doing it together. Those 2 tips, retaining responsibility for the outcome, as well as providing sufficient context for your team, go hand in hand in terms of making sure that you are delegating effectively in your business. The last tip is really about bridging into those other 2 that we just talked about, but that responsibility that you have towards the outcome means you also have responsibility towards setting accountability for everybody else underneath you. We want to set up a system for the delegation process and for the accountability process on the back end so that all of those people that you are delegating to, they are fully supported in the tasks and responsibilities that they've taken on. So that might mean a certain meeting cadence that you're using, checking in. I love using working groups with the team members that I delegate to. So checking in once a week on a larger product, or checking in a daily huddle each day with your team, thinking about what tasks they're performing, and always bringing it back to that context of the overall goal, overall outcome that you're seeking to achieve. Another thing that you might use is a spreadsheet or some sort of tracking mechanism to look at the tasks, the habits that maybe you've delegated off to your team and seeing how they're progressing towards that fundamental and that outcome. So using tracking tools, whether that's a meeting cadence or whether that is a tracking, like measuring the habits or the actions, using something like this to hold people accountable, to make it viewable in plain sight so people can see where they're at versus their peers, if you're working with a whole working group, a whole team of people working on the same project, or versus the deadline that maybe you have given them as part of the delegation process. All 3 of these really, not just the first 2, but all 3 work hand in hand. So the more context that we can provide, the more systems that we're using to track and monitor progress, as well as remembering that we retain that ultimate responsibility towards the outcome, is key to having an effective delegation process in your business and being able to hand off tasks and responsibilities and know that they're going to be successfully completed. Now, I would love to hear from you before we get into the thing that managers fail at, why they fail to delegate well. I want you to drop down in the comments. Let me know, where is it that you struggle in your business, or where have you found real success in delegating off responsibilities inside your business? The biggest problem that I actually see entrepreneurs, business owners, managers, all of them fall into when it comes to delegating is actually one of the tips that we just talked about, that responsibility to the outcome. What they think they've done is they provided sufficient clarity around it, but oftentimes the biggest trap is not providing sufficient vision. If you've ever been on the receiving end of this as a team member or an employee, you know what it's like when you've worked so hard to get something done, you've handed it back to the person who asked you to do it, and they say, nope, this isn't it. This isn't at all what I was thinking of. And it can be so disheartening as an employee, and it starts eating away at the trust that you have in that relationship. It also is hard for the manager. The manager thinks you've repeated yourself over and over again, and that it must be very clear to others. But we have to remember fundamentally as human beings that often what's up here in our heads is not easily translated to other people. We each come with our own set of parameters, our own set of way of viewing the world. And when we try and mesh our communication with somebody else's, we don't always get that meaning of the minds that we need for effective delegation. The issue is that it's not in the delegation process, it's really in the communication and some of the fundamental understanding and the way we build out that vision for our firm and keep it a fundamental part of everything that we do. You can refer to some of my other videos, like in terms of goal setting and the 3 I's that we use. It's not just indicator goals, but also our identity goals and our individual goals that matter and that we should bring our teams back to over and over again, including inside the delegation process. Now, before we get into my final recommendation, you're going to want to hear this because it's not just about delegating low-value tasks. There are some better ways of delegating effectively in your business. I want you to hit that subscribe button right now because we drop videos like this every single week with great tips for you to further growth in your business, get that team involved and working for you so you really do get great results in your business. Now this last one, what is it that you're gonna delegate in your business? Because what you delegate matters a lot to how effective your delegation process actually is. Now let's talk about the Eisenhower matrix for a moment. When we look at this matrix, what we see is a way of classifying the different activities that go on in our day-to-day lives in our business and how fundamentally important or not important and urgent or not urgent they are. Typically, where we should be spending most of our time is in the important tasks, the things that are going to actually get us further ahead in our business, going to make us more effective at reaching that overall outcome that we keep talking about in this video. But here's the thing, if you're spending your time in not important or not urgent tasks, those are ones that typically we recommend from this matrix that you actually eliminate entirely. Get it off your plate, and if you can, get it out of your business entirely. The next place that people look, and this is where you see typical advice to be delegating off tasks, is in the urgent but not important area. Now this can be a lot of things like email management, doing tasky type work inside your business. That is a great place to delegate, but I want to call your attention to something else because I know for a lot of you, you spend a lot of that precious time that you have feeling like you're running on a treadmill, right? You're running, and at the end of the day, you've been so busy, but you really haven't moved the needle on the thing that actually matters. And when we want to delegate effectively, we need to make sure that the things that actually matter to the business are getting done. So if you're still caught in a web of working on urgent tasks, it may be that you'll find that there is something that is the non-urgent but still important task where you need to delegate. A great example, for me at least, is these videos that you're seeing right now. Now, I have no problem scripting a video. I have no problem getting up and filming the video. But when it comes to editing, I don't want to do it. I look at the video and I think it looks terrible and I want to chuck it out the window. But I consider the task of doing the videos, of getting the videos out there for you to see, one of the important but not urgent things in my business. And so I hired a video editor because they could help me in that quadrant, in that non-urgent, except maybe when I set an actual deadline for it, a self-imposed deadline, but it is important. And so if you are finding there's tasks in there that are important to your business, but you're resisting doing them in some way, how can you delegate off tasks How can you delegate off responsibility in a way that ensures that those important tasks are going to get done? So that's my final piece of advice to you. When you are checking out the activities that you want to delegate off effectively, you need to make sure that, yes, some of the not important but urgent tasks can be delegated off. Those are often very easy things to delegate off. But more importantly, are there important tasks in your business, important projects that you're getting held up on for some reason, that delegating off part of the responsibility or all of the responsibility to somebody else can be an even higher value, far more effective use of your delegation abilities than simply sending off the tasky stuff in your business. So I challenge you to think about what that could be for you. And to go along with that, I want to share with you a case study of one of my clients, Daniel, who ended up using this very effectively in his business to double his client base in the course of a couple months, and really was able to step back and just work on his business instead of in his business. Wouldn't that be great? So go ahead and click that, a link below. You'll find that in the description, and I will see you in next week's video. Thanks.